Alrighty, let me make sure that I am live on both Facebook and YouTube. Okay. All right, looks like we're connected on both sites. So good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are. And welcome to Sunday Social. So I do have a lot prepared for tonight. So I'm going to wait for like a minute to see if anybody else is going to join us. So if you are already in here, just say hi so I can know that you're here. And we'll wait for a minute because I know we don't want to have a lot of just airtime with nothing being said because I'm going to post these on Facebook and YouTube afterwards. And I know people don't want to sit around and wait to hear nothing. So, okay. Hope everybody had a good week, good Valentine's Day, and that everything is going well. For people who are studying for the exam, I hope that you have the right tools and that you are preparing and that you are taking advantage of the YouTube channel, Day-to-Day Social Work, and the videos that are posted there. And I also hope that you will take advantage of the tutoring that I provide if that's something that you think that you need. Tutoring will start back very soon, and I will make a post to let you know about that. And I'm going to do some discounted group sessions. So be on the lookout for more information about that, as well as the pre-recorded sessions and just everything else related to tutoring. So if anybody has any questions, you can post them. Even after I post this video on YouTube and on Facebook, you can always submit a question or a comment after I post this, even though it won't be live, and I will get to it. So now that we've gotten that out the way, the topics I have prepared for tonight are BACA. And some of you may be familiar with BACA. Some of you may have never heard of it, but it's an acronym. It's B.A.C.A, Bikers Against Child Abuse. I first learned about BACA probably in 2015 when I went to a training that they held when I worked for the police department as a victim advocate. So we'll talk about BACA. We will also talk about the Netflix documentary Abducted in Plain Sight. So I know some people may not have seen that. It is a documentary on Netflix, and a lot of people have seen it. So hopefully we can discuss that, and people will and we'll discuss that towards the end because I want to see how many people come in and might actually have a comment on that. I also want to talk about narcissism and narcissists. That's something that I've been really looking into lately. Narcissistic psychopaths, narcissistic sociopaths, and that kind of thing. Let's see. Also, I went to supervision yesterday, so I'll be discussing my supervision. And then also real IDs. So that's something that a lot of people aren't aware of. A lot of people do not know about the real ID that everybody has to have by, I think it's October 2020, in order to gain access to certain federal buildings and to fly domestically in the country. So I'll be talking about that. And then also, I'll be letting you know an update about my counseling. And then one person sent a comment, a topic, I guess, and wanted to discuss careers and where the money is in social work after you get licensed. So that's what we're going to talk about this evening. So I'll just go ahead and get started because I know that it's Sunday and people have things to do and families to tend to and kids to get ready and all this other stuff. And you probably have shows that you want to watch at 8 o'clock and all that kind of stuff. So I think I'll start by answering or discussing this topic that one of you all sent to me and wanted to know about careers in social work and where the money is after you get your license. So careers in social work, as we know, social work is a very, very broad field. Most people give us that stigma of taking people's kids and working for the Department of Social Services or Child and Family Services and that kind of thing. But we, of course, know that we do a whole lot more than that, that we don't take people's kids and that we don't just work for family services. So to answer that question, we do everything. I mean, I've worked in all kinds of different, fields and areas. So I really started out working with at-risk youth as a counselor. And even though that wasn't an official social work job because I didn't have my degree at that time, but that was definitely social work without me even being a social worker, because kids these days go through so many more issues than we did. And I'm saying we, speaking for people my age and up, and I'm 32. So even with me being as young as 32, kids definitely still face way more difficulties in their childhood, to me, than a lot of us did. And I'm not saying that we didn't face any difficulties, but it seems like with social media and bullying and all this new stuff that's developing, it seems like kids are definitely experiencing a lot more hardships and mental issues and trauma and that kind of thing. And when I started out working with at-risk youth, I was definitely still young myself. I was in my early 20s, and the kids had a lot of traumas then. So, I mean, now it's 10 years later, so I could only imagine what kind of stuff they go through now. So I've worked with at-risk youth. I've worked at a domestic violence shelter, doing housing grant. I've done victim advocate at the police department. I've worked with the homeless population in transitional housing. Of course, we can do forensic interviews. We can do therapy. We can do everything. What else have I done? I did day groups at a mental health facility that did day groups for people with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and depression. I now work at a hospital as a case manager. You can work in all kinds of different areas, hospice, hospital. You can work as an EAP counselor. The possibilities are endless. You can own your own nonprofit. You can be a manager of a nonprofit. You can do whatever you want to do as a social worker. So the possibilities are endless. Now, as far as where the money is after you get your license, and I know a lot of people always say, we didn't get into this for the money, because we don't make, and I'm not speaking for everyone, but a lot of people in this field don't make a whole lot of money because of where they are as far as what state they're in, what area of social work they work in, if they work for a state agency or a federal agency or a nonprofit. So it really just depends. But once you get your license, I can say that a lot of doors will open for you. And hopefully y'all can hear me, because I think I might have had this thing covered up, but a lot of doors will open for you, definitely. Like, I would have never gotten into the hospital if I had not had my license. So it's very hard to get into certain places without having your license. And sometimes even if you have a bachelor's in social work and you're working on your master's, some people go ahead and get their license on the bachelor's level so that they can be licensed and still have access to jobs, like working at a hospital, because you have to have a license in some places. So also, whatever I say, don't take it as across the board. I'm just speaking mostly from my experience and from the state of South Carolina, because some people are super picky about words and what you say. So I just want to make that clear. But definitely medical social work has proven to be one of the fields that you might get paid a little more money once you have your license. In my experience, that is. And then also military social work seems to be very, I won't say lucrative, but you definitely will probably make a lot more money in the military field, doing therapy and working with veterans who are homeless and that kind of thing, case management even. What else? Some state and federal agencies. So it really just depends on what you do, and you have to map your career out. So you'll hear me say that all the time. Map out your career, be strategic, do your research, negotiate your salary, definitely negotiate your salary. Don't sell yourself short. Don't think that you are asking for too much. But you have to do your research for your area with your education and your credentials and your background. So, and your experience. So you don't want to be coming out of college with no experience and no license and asking for $100,000 when you don't really know what you're doing and you only have your degree and nothing else. So you have to research those things. You have to see what the market is in your area for someone with your credentials and your experience and your education. So that's that. Now, next thing I wanted to talk about was my counseling. So I started counseling about 3 weeks ago for something that was going on in my life. And I started with a male therapist online. I've met with him twice. And then this past week, I met with a female therapist for the first time. And I really think that therapy is good. Not for what I went for. I mean, I think it's helpful to be able to talk to someone that's neutral about your situation. But for what I went for, I kind of had the feeling like, nothing that you all can say is going to help me for this particular problem. Now, I didn't go for depression or mental illness or like anything that drastic. But initially I was only going to go because I felt like I thought it would be a good idea to be in therapy since I want to be a therapist. But then I had something happen, and then I thought, okay, well, maybe this will be good for me to be in therapy for this. But I think the thing that I'm going through is just something that I have to go through and deal with time, and that, no counseling is going to really help. But I'm still in the beginning stages, so I'm still going to go and try it out, just like we ask our clients to do. We always ask I and some of us ask our clients to give it a try. So I'm not going to just stop going because I didn't think it was helpful. And I'm not saying that none of it was helpful, because my therapist got me to write a letter to get things out, and it was therapeutic. So, but I don't think that this will be a long-term thing for this particular issue. So I think that maybe short-term therapy will be good for me. So maybe that's how I should see it, as, short-term therapy. It's not going to be a long-term thing, but it's good to make a connection, I will say, with other professionals in the field. But I kind of felt like I tried my best not to be social worker Ashley when I was in the session with the therapists, and I just wanted to be Ashley and be a client. And so I kind of felt how I guess our patients and our clients feel when they go to therapy. So overall, for me, it's been a good experience, and I'm going to go and continue to go at least about 3 or 4 more times just to see what I get out of it, because who knows what can pop up, over the next couple of weeks. So counseling so far, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll give it a 6, which is fairly high, I think. So anyway, that's counseling. Now, supervision yesterday. I've been going to supervision since August of 2018. And of course, when you're going to get your advanced license, the license after your master's level in the state of South Carolina, that is, and it's called an LISWCP, which is Licensed Independent Social Worker Clinical Practice in the state of South Carolina, or it could be advanced practice, which is more macro. You have to get 100 hours of clinical supervision from a state-approved clinical supervisor, and half of them have to be or can be in a group, but the other half has to be individual. And so all of them could be individual, but if you want to do half of them in a group, you can. So far, I've gone for about 7 sessions or so, and I've only been in group. So yesterday we kind of just talked about narcissists. We talked about our clients. We did some case reviews. And And we talk about a whole lot of random stuff. I had my notes somewhere, but I don't know where I put them. But we just talk about a whole bunch of random stuff related to social work. And our supervisor tells us about clients that he's had throughout his time as a therapist, and he gives us resources and books to read and that kind of thing. And so the 4 hours, sometimes they go by quickly, sometimes they don't. But we also discussed, because somebody has asked before, how can I find a supervisor? And of course, everybody on this channel are all from different states. And so it's different for different states. But if your state will allow you to have a supervisor that's in another state, then if you want my supervisor's information, I can give you that. But I'm pretty sure you could find somebody in your own state. But if you just want somewhere to start, I don't really think it's really conducive to go across state lines, because it could get too much red tape and paperwork and that kind of thing. But if that's something that you would prefer, then just let me know and I can get that information to you. Let's see what else. Okay, so those are the kind of things that I just wanted to mention. Now we'll get into the main things that I wanted to talk about. So one of the things that came across my attention during this week was the real IDs. So a colleague from the partnering hospital that we merged with sent out a PDF about real IDs. Now, I had already known about the real IDs because I had to get one when I didn't have to, but I got one when I renewed my license in December of last year. And so the real ID, in just a nutshell, before I start reading this stuff to you, and I can, I think I could probably send you this PDF if you wanted it. But you can also Google. But anyway, so the real IDs are, and where is my license? I'll show it to you. The real IDs are licenses or identification cards or whatever you want to call it that everyone in the United States has to have by, I think it's October 2020. Every state and every territory resident, you have to have, if you are planning to travel domestically on a commercial aircraft, and if you are going to go into certain federal buildings and gain access into certain federal buildings. So let me show you what it looks like for the state of South Carolina. Okay, so this here is my license, and my face looks a little fat on here, but you see this little star, this little gold star? Let's see, that is what distinguishes the real ID from the fake ID. Well, no, sorry, just threw a little joke in there. It's not a fake ID. So that's what distinguishes the real ID from the regular ID that everybody else has. It's not a fake ID, so people don't get in uproar. But anyway, so that little gold star indicates that you have a real ID. So let me tell you what I had to do to get it. So I could have just renewed my license and gotten a regular ID. But if you want the real ID, you have to provide more identification. So I had to give them my social security card, my birth certificate, a piece of mail with my current address on it that matches my license address. And I think it was something else. Can't remember exactly what it was. Social security, birth certificate, and a piece of mail. It was something else. So anyway, you can just look it up for your state because all the states are different. But and so they gave me the real ID. Now, according to this printout, and let me read it to you. Not the whole thing, of course, but according to this document, there was a law that passed in 2005. So it says in 2005, Congress passed the Real ID Act of 2005, a federal law modifying the security standard for identification documents. Congress passed the legislation in response to the 9/11 Commission's recommendation that the federal government set requirements and issue standards for federal identification document recognition. So it says the law has endured a long implementation process as compliance requires action from both the states and the federal government. So driver's licenses are issued by the states, and all 50 states applied for some form of an extension of the original compliance deadline. So even though this act was passed in 2005, and here we are in 2019, 14 years later, the reason why this hasn't been implemented is because every state asked for an extension on this. So it says, regardless of previously shifting timelines, according to the Department of Homeland Security timelines, by October 21st, 2020, so next year, just over a year, every state and territory resident will need to present a real ID, compliance license, or ID, or another acceptable form of identification for accessing federal facilities, entering nuclear power plants, and boarding commercial aircrafts. And yes, this means if you're going to fly domestically from South Carolina to New York, or from New York to Illinois, or from Arizona to Pennsylvania, wherever you're going, if you're going to get on a flight after October 1st, 2020, you have to have the real ID. So this is very important for us to know, especially for our clients, because sometimes things get past people and they don't know, and so they get penalized, or not necessarily in this case penalized, but they are denied access to certain rights and privileges because of the fact that they just didn't know. So this is something that you probably want to look into for yourself so that you can inform your clients and your patients about this kind of stuff, so that they will be aware, and your family and friends too, in case they don't know. So this is important information that you definitely need to know and definitely need to share. And I'm pretty sure they're going to bring more awareness to this kind of thing, to this thing in particular, as we get closer to the deadline for everybody to have this. So then they go on and they discuss, this particular document discusses how this affects older adults. Now, they don't really define an older adult on this document, and I was looking for an age on here, but let's see. And your state may already be implementing this. I do want to make that clear too, because this is, like I said, different states are in different levels of compliance with this act. So some might have already implemented this. Some might give people until October, or what's before, September 30th or whatever, to get theirs. But there are varying levels of compliance with this act. So just be aware of that. And the Department of Homeland Security has a map that details where each state lies as far as the compliance for that state. So it says the real ID is generally described as a requirement for accessing federal facilities, entering nuclear power plants, and boarding commercial aircraft. However, it is important to clarify what DHS means by federal facilities. A federal facility generally means a secure federal facility or military base. The real ID is not needed to do any of the following. So you don't have to have the real ID with the little star to apply for or receive federal benefits, like like benefits from the Veterans Affairs or the Social Security Administration. You don't need to have a real ID to enter the post office or other federal facility that does not require identification. So it's only stuff like if you're going to, I guess, like the Pentagon, or like they said before, a military base and that kind of thing. So you can't, and it's my understanding that you won't be able to go onto a military base with just a regular license anymore. You have to have the real ID. You don't need it to visit a hospital or receive life-saving services, and you don't need it to ride an Amtrak or other public ground transportation. And it says, just to reiterate, for older adults, remember the real ID is not needed to apply for or receive federal benefits. So I think that's what this document really wanted to convey and get across. But the real ID is something that you probably want to research for your own knowledge and for the knowledge of your family, friends, and your clients. So that's it on the real ID. Now, let's see, narcissists and narcissism. So when you look at the DSM-5, narcissistic personality disorder is a cluster B personality, falls under the cluster B personality chart, for lack of a better word right now. So also in that category is histrionic, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder. So it's kind of those, they call them eccentric. I can't remember, but that's where this falls under, narcissism. So in the DSM-5, there are 9 criteria that are listed, and a person must meet 5 out of the 9 in order to be diagnosed with narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder. When you talk about sociopaths and psychopaths, those are 2 terms that are used interchangeably, and they also are used to describe someone with antisocial personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder. So, but when we talk about narcissism, a lot of people have heard the term narcissism, and they use the term narcissist and narcissistic pretty randomly, kind of like people use the word bipolar. Like, people are always saying, oh, he's bipolar, she's bipolar, and they use the word incorrectly. And they just use it as an everyday term. Same thing with narcissism. But narcissists, when you look at the actual definition and the criteria that people have to meet for this, narcissists are very complicated. So these are people who have, and they don't know the cause of it, but these people who study this and who've come up with this, they really think that it's due to childhood trauma. A lot of times people may have been abandoned in childhood. They may not have been cared for properly, loved properly. They might have been emotionally neglected, emotionally abused. They may have been in foster care. And so they think that people who experience trauma and abandonment later on in life, if they don't get that resolved, then they turn into a narcissist. And so we know that narcissists don't have empathy for anyone. They don't express any remorse or regret for things that they do to people. They only think about themselves. They're very selfish and self-absorbed. They, and I think of this in terms of parents who can be narcissistic and significant others who can be narcissistic. So we'll start with the parents. So a parent can be emotionally unavailable to a child. A parent can be all about themselves. A parent can tell you that you're nothing, that you will never be anything, that you'll never amount to anything without them. A parent can take all of their frustrations out on you and then blame you for it. A parent can, so all of these things are traits that narcissists have. A narcissistic parent, a lot of people grow up with a narcissistic parent. And the more that I've been doing research on this, and I don't like to try to apply everything that I learn about social work on other people. I'm not that kind of social worker, but I do believe that my dad, now that I'm looking at this stuff, I do believe that maybe my dad was a narcissistic person. And I say that because he kind of fits all of that. So let me pull this up for y'all because I want to make sure that I'm giving you correct information. So I don't want to just be talking off the top of my head and just telling y'all stuff without giving you accurate stuff, accurate information. So we're gonna do narcissism according to DSM-5. Okay, so like I said, you have to meet. Let's see. Do I want to do the PDF here? Maybe the PDF is the best way to go instead of going to this website. This is directly from DSM-5. Okay. Now, and then also, of course, when we think about relationships, narcissists are people who are liars, cheaters. They are very deceptive. And this is not just, I want to be clear, this is not just typical, oh, your boyfriend cheated on you and now he's a narcissist. No, this is not, oh, my boyfriend lied and said he was going to a party and he was really hanging out with the girl he dated in high school because they ran into each other at the grocery store and they wanted to catch up. No, this is a person who is a pathological liar. They lie for no reason at all. And they continue to lie. And they lie for no, like, it's so mind-boggling. Like, if you go and look this stuff up and really research it, or if you even watch videos on YouTube about it from legit resources, like, you will see how legitimately mind-blowing it is that a person can be so cold and careless and selfish and narcissistic. So anyway, it says, this is from the mayoclinic.org. And I'm also going to just read it from DSM-5 also. Well, let me just start with DSM-5. Okay. So DSM-5 criteria, narcissistic personality disorder. Okay, so the essential features of a personality disorder are impairments in personality, self and interpersonal functioning, and the presence of pathological personality traits. To diagnose narcissistic personality disorder, the following criteria must be met. A, significant impairments in personality functioning manifest by 1, impairments of self-functioning, which is either A, identity, so excessive reference to others for self-definition or self-esteem, regulation, exaggerated self-appraisal may be inflated or deflated, or vacillate between extremes. Emotional regulation mirrors fluctuations in self-esteem. So this is basically saying that this person has to have appraisal. Their self-appraisal is inflated or deflated, or it can vacillate between both of those depending on their emotions and their self-esteem. But basically they have to have admiration, and they have to have supply is what they call it. So let's say that your parent is a narcissist, and your parent is someone who has to have admiration, and they need to feel, they need to feel grandiose. So I'm trying to use terms that we use in social work that you've probably heard before instead of using everyday terms. So this person needs to have and needs to feel admired, or they need to feel a sense of importance. And so they do this by manipulating other people, i.e. their children or their significant other, and they really get into your mind and they manipulate you, and they get you to praise them, and they can use shame and guilt, and it's mind-blowing. But anyway, and y'all probably know some of this stuff. But I don't want to go through this whole DSM-5 thing, but I'm going to show you, I'm just going to talk about the let's see, the criteria. Okay. So I don't want to bore y'all with this stuff. That's why I'm trying to pick out the stuff that's mostly important on this. Okay, so it says goal setting is based on gaining approval from others. Personal standards are unreasonably high in order to see oneself as exceptional, or too low based on a sense of entitlement, often aware of their own motivations, and impairments in empathy. So their impaired ability to recognize or identify with feelings and needs of others, excessively attuned to reactions of others, but only if perceived as relevant to self, over or underestimate of own effect on others. So they have no empathy. They treat you any kind of way. They will lie to you and tell you that they love you. And maybe they do in their own way, but their love is based on the supply that you give them. So narcissistic supply is what the person gains from you. So let's say that there's a parent and the parent has 3 children. So one of the children might really admire the parent. So they know how to groom this child to give them compliments. The other child might be very fragile, let's say, and they could easily make this child cry. And the child knows that. And so the child may do and say things to get on the parents' good side in order for them not to make them cry. So it's very complex, and I want y'all to understand how complex it is because of how normalized people make narcissistic personality disorder on a regular daily basis, because not everybody is a narcissist, and that's very important to know and to understand. And then it says intimacy, relationships largely superficial and exist to serve self-esteem regulation, mutuality constrained by little genuine interest in others, experience, and predominance of a need for personal gain. Pathological personality traits in the following domain. It says antagonism, characterized by grandiosity, feelings of entitlement, either overt or covert. So we know that overt is when you do things out in the open. Covert is when you cover them up. A good way to remember that is overt starts with the letter O and open starts with the letter O. So if somebody is overt, they're openly doing something. If somebody is covert, they're concealing something or closed off. So C and C, covert, closed, concealed, overt, O, open. That's how you can remember the difference between the two. It says self-centeredness, firmly holding to the belief that one is better than others, condescending towards others. That's very important because narcissists are very condescending towards others. And I think back about my dad. He was always condescending. Everything was about him. If he didn't eat certain stuff, we couldn't eat certain stuff. If he went to church on a certain day, we had to go on a certain day. His religion was our religion. We didn't have a say-so on anything. He would make me cry, and then he would come and antagonize me and say, oh, well, now you're in here crying and feeling sorry for yourself. So these are the traits of a person with narcissistic personality disorder. Now, I'm not saying that you can just simply diagnose somebody with these things and this disorder just because they possess some of those traits, because again, as we know, you have to meet certain criteria, a certain number out of the 9. And I'm going to tell you what the 9 are in just a second. Also, it says attention seeking. So excessive attempts to attract and be the focus of attention of others, admiration seeking. And it goes on and on and on. But again, you all can read this for yourself in the DSM-5. Another thing too, though, narcissists in a relationship, they can be addicted to things. Namely, porn is one of them, drugs, and it's like they don't get a fix. And this is an actual like disorder that cannot be cured. It can only be treated. It's something that's pathological, and it's something that they can't help. And so when we talked about this in my supervision yesterday, even though I understand it, it's really hard for me to conceptualize the fact that a person can't have empathy for other people. Like if you hurt somebody and you see them crying, to a narcissist, they don't care. They can look at you and they just don't care. So it's really hard for me to really understand that, even though I do understand it. But it's really hard to conceptualize that when I am a person who would see someone cry and I would feel bad, especially if I caused them to cry. So narcissists don't experience that. They're not empathetic. In a relationship, they may have several people that they're in a relationship with that you have no idea about. And they use each person for a different thing. So, and that's why they call them narcissistic supply. So one person might supply them with sex. One person might supply them with an emotional connection. One person might supply them with money. So they're constantly grooming new sources of supply, and they have them lined up. And so there's this whole cycle also where they love bomb you. So it seems kind of normal if you meet somebody and they are all about you and they're gifting you with things and making you feel special and making you feel like you're the one and that kind of thing. That's the love bombing phase. Then they start to devalue you at some point. So they look at you and see what all your weak points are. They see what you're going to tolerate. They're looking at what they can get from you and see how far they can push you. So then once you stop being their shiny new little toy, then and they get their attention on someone else because they're constantly looking for new supply and they're seeking attention and admiration. And maybe you've been dating this person for 5 or 6 months, and then they've kind of gotten used to you, and now they're kind of getting bored with you. So they're still going to be with you, but they're going to go ahead and start grooming the next person to fall in line, because this all stems from like the fear of abandonment, if I'm not mistaken. So they can't have healthy relationships. It's a cycle. So like I said, they love bomb you. At some point, they start to devalue you and they start grooming the next person, and then they discard you, and they can discard you with no warning. So this is why people get into marriages and relationships for years and years and years, and they don't see this coming because the narcissist has a fake life, and they're like chameleons, and they can change into the kind of person that they want you to think that they are to match you and your life. And then once they don't see the value in you anymore, they can just dump you because they've already groomed the next person to take your place. So normally they won't discard you. And these are terms that are used. So love bombing, devaluing, and discarding are actual terms that are used. So they discard you, but not until they make sure they have somebody else lined up. And you have to understand the fine line between narcissism and somebody that's just, and I won't say it's a fine line because the line isn't really that fine when I think about it, but you have to understand the difference between a narcissist and someone who is just out playing and cheating. Because normally when people are cheating, they do have somebody else lined up, and they will make sure that they have somebody lined up before they leave you. I mean, women do it all the time, men too. So I'm not being sexist or anything like that. But, you know, if you feel like you're in a relationship that's going nowhere, and some people don't break up. They feel like they want to have the next person lined up before they go and dump the person they're with. So some of this is like normal behavior, even though we know it's not normal, but it's typical behavior. But like I said, it's a difference between somebody just preparing for a breakup by getting somebody else ready to bring in versus a narcissist who always has somebody on deck to be the replacement for a person. And this is how they live their lives. And it's a miserable, sad life to live, to have to lie and be deceitful and betray somebody all the time like that. But this is how they are, and it never stops. And it's sad because they sometimes make children with people, and then, you know, that's a child that's now brought into the situation. And then, you know, they use the child as a pawn, and it's just terrible cycle. So make sure you look into let me look at the 9 traits before I stop talking about that. So okay, let's see here. a mental condition in which people have an inflated sense of their own importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, troubled relationships, a lack of empathy for others. But behind this mask of extreme confidence lies a fragile self-esteem that's vulnerable to the slightest criticism. That's another thing too. So they make themselves seem so important and grandiose, and they seem very confident, but they have a mask on, and that's because they are pathological liars and they fit whatever situation they need to fit. But behind that mask is someone who can't be alone, who can't deal with reality of life or their past trauma. So if you've been sexually abused as a child or as an adolescent, if you were emotionally neglected, if you were whatever, some people can't cope with that. Some people can't come back from that, especially if they never received that kind of attention and that kind of love at some point before they fully developed. So they are very fragile people, and they cannot handle criticism, whether it's constructive or not. And they make it seem like they're okay, but these people are very weak people, but they make it seem like they aren't. And they will groom your family to like them and love them and to be on their side and agree with them. They'll talk to your friends. And if anybody is against them, they kind of have a vendetta for that person. Not that they're going to go and do anything to them, but like they don't want to be around them. If a person sees through the narcissist, they don't like that person because they peep their game. Like they know what it is. So let me see. Make sure I'm still recording here. Looks like I'm frozen. Okay. And y'all gotta excuse me. I got this t-shirt on because it's Sunday and I'm just chilling out. But okay, so back to this. Narcissistic personality disorder causes problems in many areas of life, such as relationships, work, school, financial affairs. People with narcissistic personality disorder may be generally unhappy and disappointed when they're not given the special favors or admiration they believe they deserve. They may find their relationships unfulfilling, and others may not enjoy being around them. So they're very good at making things seem one way when it's really not. And they are not happy people, regardless of how it looks on the outside. They can't be alone because they can't deal with themselves, their reality, their past trauma, and the things that they've done to other people. They're very sneaky people that have people tricked. It's mind-blowing to me. I'm sorry. When you start really looking into this stuff, it's very mind-blowing the way that people can be. So signs and symptoms of narcissistic personality disorder, and the severity of symptoms vary. And this is all from the Mayo Clinic, by the way. The other stuff that I read earlier was directly from DSM-5. Okay, so again, they can, and not every narcissist will have this, but people with the disorder can have an exaggerated sense of self-importance, of course, a sense of entitlement, and require constant excessive admiration, expect to be recognized as superior even without achievements that warrant it, exaggerate achievements and talents. They are preoccupied with fantasies about success, power, brilliance, beauty, or the perfect mate. They believe they are superior and can only associate with equally special people. And again, this is not every one of them. They monopolize conversations and belittle or look down on people they perceive as inferior. They expect special favors, and they twist your thinking. Like they have you thinking that you are the blame for everything. Sometimes they don't answer questions directly. They twist your words. They ask you, when you ask them a question, they ask you a question as their answer. They don't take accountability for anything. They don't take responsibility for anything. They will have you thinking that things are your fault, and you will end up to them when you've done nothing wrong. So they can really get into your mind and have you thinking that something is wrong with you. So, and also another thing is, if you've experienced growing up with a parent as a narcissist, sometimes you end up dating a person who's a narcissist, because a lot of times we look for and this is unconsciously. This is not something that we just go out and automatically do. Sometimes we look for the things that we were lacking in a parent, in a mate, and that mate ends up being just like that parent, but you don't know it, of course, because this is a narcissist also. So it's crazy because you don't go out seeking, of course, the bad traits that your parent had, but still so many people end up with it anyway, with a mate that kind of resembles their parent. And you will see that even without thinking about narcissism, just thinking about regular relationships, you'll see that. Like, it's crazy. Anyway, so they can be envious of others and believe that others are envious of them. They behave in an arrogant and haughty manner, come across as conceited, boastful, and pretentious, insist on having the best of everything. For instance, the best car or house or whatever. And they take advantage of others to get what they want. So that's the relationship part also. So having people to think a certain way about them, and then they'll break up with you and you'll come crawling back, and then they'll take you back, and then they'll love bomb you and then devalue you and discard you again. And it's a cycle. And that's why people are off and on for years and years and years with people, and they don't realize that they're dealing with a narcissist. And what else? Or you may break up with them. So when you break up with the narcissist, they can try to come back, and they hoover you, is what this is another term dealing with narcissists. They hoover you. So they try to suck you back in, and they come around and they say, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm going to make things better. I understand why you left me, and I'll never do this, and this again. I won't cheat again. I won't lie again, while they're lying directly to your face, that kind of thing. Same thing with a parent. So your parent can be, you could be completely done with your parent because you turned 18 and now you don't have to deal with them anymore, and they see that you're not coming around and they're getting older and they need someone to care for them. So they say, well, let me go and hoover Ashley. So Ashley, I understand that I treated you so badly as a child. We had some differences and things like that, but I see that you're an adult now. Let's go out to dinner. Let's try to build a relationship. Let's try to hang out sometimes, and I'll come visit you. You come visit me, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool. We can try. So then you go to dinner, and then your narcissistic parent says something that the narcissist says. So whatever it is to trigger you and make you realize why you didn't want to fool with them again in the first place. So, but normally it doesn't happen that quickly. So you may go to dinner with the parent and things are fine. And then you go 2 weeks later to dinner with the parent again and things are fine. And then they text you and say, I was at your house the other day and I really didn't like the fact that your boyfriend came over and you talked to him instead of talking to me, and you made me leave or whatever. And then you two get into an argument, and then it's just this whole thing. So, and that's just something off the top of my head. But basically, the parent can also hoover you, where they try to suck you back in and get you to be back on good terms with them. But then, of course, they do something or say something to mess it all up and make you realize why you stopped fooling with them in the first place. And then you might not even discard them. They will discard you and say, oh, well, I knew I shouldn't have tried to build a relationship with you again. And they stop messing with you for, 4 or 5 months or whatever. And then they start realizing that they need that narcissistic supply from you again because they're getting older. And I could go on and on and on about this, but I won't. Okay. So that's that. It says become impatient or angry when they don't receive special attention, have significant interpersonal problems, and easily feel slighted, react with rage or contempt, and try to belittle the other person to make themselves appear superior. Rage is definitely something that's major when they don't get their way, and they can be very dangerous people. So don't underestimate the danger that a narcissist can have, because they are people that you don't really know. They put on a facade and they make you think that they're one way, but that's not who they truly are. And then you don't know what they're capable of. So they have difficulty regulating emotions and behavior. experience major problems dealing with stress and adapting to change. They feel depressed and moody because they fall short of perfection, and they have secret feelings of insecurity, shame, vulnerability, and humiliation. So they're very weak, fragile people, but they will never let you know it. Now, enough about narcissists. Any questions or anything before I go on to talk about BACA? And then lastly, we'll talk about abducted in plain sight. So let's see. Let me just look and see if there are any comments. No comments. Okay, so moving right along, BACA. So BACA is Bikers Against Child Abuse. It was actually founded by a social worker, which I did not know that prior to doing a little research before starting the live tonight. So it says BACA was founded by a licensed clinical social worker who was a registered play therapist / supervisor and who taught part-time as faculty at Brigham Young University for 17 years. He was in practice for over 20 years, most of which has been spent in the treatment of abused children. He became keenly aware that while the system was able to offer much in the way of helping children to heal, there were gaps that needed to be filled. So BACA is a biker organization. It's a 501c3, and it exists to provide aid, comfort, safety, and support for children that have been sexually, physically, and emotionally abused. It says we are dedicated to the principle that one of the basic rights of childhood is to be safe and protected. And when the child's family or environment have failed them, we stand ready to provide it to them. So it says BACA is a strong organization of dedicated individuals who are willing to sacrifice any and all in order to protect and secure a child's basic right to a happy childhood. So BACA, and you may know about this organization, you may not, you may have heard of them or seen them. They are the bikers who attend like court hearings with the child for protection. They will stay if the child is afraid and the family needs secure. Let's say that the child's mom was abusive and the dad had custody of the child. So I'm trying to be, gender neutral here instead of giving the stereotypical scenario with the mom having the child. But anyway, so let's say that the dad is a single parent and the mom was abusive and the dad has custody of the children. So let's say that the mom is always coming to the house in a rage and throwing stuff. She was already abusive, so she's been beating the children before. I'm not going to make up any kind of scenario because that's just not what I like. I don't like to talk about child abuse because I had a cousin that was killed as a baby. But anyway, so let's say that the children are very afraid of the mom and they're hyper vigilant anytime they hear noises or thuds and thumps against the floor and the walls and the ceilings and that kind of thing. So let's say that the mom is addicted to drugs and sometimes she gets drunk and she comes to the house and she bangs on the door and she does all this stuff and she scares the children. So BACA would be there to protect the child from the mom. So they would actually come to the home and they would have their bikes and they would shield the child from the mom to make the child feel protected. And this, I think, is so cool because like if you see their presentation, because like I said in the beginning of the video, I went to a training when I worked at the police department as a victim advocate, and they had a training for us to get victim service provider credits. And when you see them, like they're big biker guys and women, they're big biker people, we'll say that. And they are very serious about what they do. They take their job. And I think this is a voluntary thing. I don't think that it's paid. I'll have to look and make sure. Let's see. Yeah, I have to look and make sure. But they definitely are there to intimidate, I think. I mean, and sometimes, some people are not afraid of anything. But if you have, 8 or 9 people on bikes who are looking kind of intimidating, some people may be intimidated by that and they'll back off and they'll go away. So it says, in addition to becoming a presence in the life of a wounded child, BACA also provides for the children by attending court proceedings and parole hearings with them, escorting them to and from school or errands if necessary, and many other ways to ensure that the children are free from fear and can return to their previous level of adaptive functioning. Let's see. So, I mean, this is a great organization, and I thought about this because when I was watching Abducted in Plain Sight, at the end of that documentary, they mentioned BACA. And I was like, oh, I forgot about BACA. And so I thought it would be good to talk about them before I talked about Abducted in Plain Sight, which is on Netflix. So let's see, is there anything else that I think I want to tell y'all? Who are the members of BACA? First and foremost, BACA members are bikers. We all share a common love to the open road on two wheels and the brotherhood and sisterhood that can only be found in the biker community. Professionally, members of BACA come from all walks of life. There are professionals, blue collars, and everything in between. BACA only discriminates against one kind of person: child abusers. Everyone else meeting the basic requirements and has the time, the commitment, and the energy are welcome. So what is required to become a member of BACA? It says to become a full patched BACA member, a person must have regular access to a motorcycle that will do the speed limit. They must be 18 years old or older. They must submit to a federal fingerprinted background check. They must attend monthly BACA meetings, rides, court hearings, and other BACA events, and ride with the BACA chapter for 1 year minimum. They are then presented to the governing board of directors and must be unanimously voted in to become a member. So you got to put in your time. You got to do at least a year doing all this stuff with them, and then you can become a member. Let's see. And you have to, of course, pass that federal fingerprint background check. They do receive training every year at the annual international meeting and conference. BACA conducts more than a dozen workshops. Additionally, every BACA chapter has access to a licensed mental health professional. That professional is also responsible for conducting training for the BACA membership, while the professionals are from differing disciplines. Their dedication and desire to help unifies us in our mission. Okay, so how does BACA protect its members from accusations of child abuse? There are several ways to obtain background information about a referral case. The police reports that they are reviewed, court transcripts, medical records, which can be used and verified in some cases. Interviews with family and friends can be helpful in establishing or verifying. Okay. So I'll let y'all read all that. The website is bacaworld.org. So BACAWORLD.org. And I'll put that in the description box if you want to go and check that out later. And it has this whole frequently asked questions section, but I'm not going to go through all this and take up more time. So last thing, okay, Abducted in Plain Sight. Now, I know that a lot of people have not seen this documentary yet, so I am not going to give it away, but if you have seen it, then if you've seen it and you're on here, let me know now. So I'm going to try not to give away, because this is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. So Abducted in Plain Sight, which is a documentary on Netflix, is about a family who lived next door to another family, and the father in that family became very close to this family, particularly one of their children, that's a girl, and he abducted the girl in plain sight. And so a lot of things went down between the guy that abducted the daughter, and he manipulated her. He may have even been a narcissist now that I think about it, but he manipulated her in her young age, and he abducted her about 2 or 3 times, and the parents were kind of okay with it. Kinda. I'm not going to say they were fully okay with it, but that's the kind of vibe that I got from the documentary. Like they were also tied up with this guy as well. Both the mom and the dad had some connections with this guy separately. And so he kind of used the connections he had with the mom and the dad against them, which prevented him from getting in trouble because they didn't want to be exposed for the dealings they each had with him. And he manipulated this child and assaulted this child sexually, and it was just crazy. So if you haven't seen Abducted in Plain Sight, and I could tell y'all stuff, but I don't want to give it away because I don't like people giving spoiler alerts for stuff that I hadn't seen yet. But if you're on social media, particularly Facebook, a lot of people have talked about it and have memes about it and that kind of thing. So make sure you watch it and let me know what you think about it. Even if you just comment in the group or on this video later on in the week after you're able to watch it, then let me know what you think about it. So the mom actually is a social worker. I don't think that she was a social worker at the time, but I think later on she became a social worker, and people have found her Facebook page. And I mean, this family was, I don't know, they were a little weird. I mean, the things that they let happen, and even when you listen to some of the phone conversations that the parents had with the child who was abducted, who was away, it was just like talking to your kid who's an adult and who just moved off somewhere, and they're like, "Are you coming home?" And I'm like, "This is a child that's been abducted, and you're asking if they're coming home." I mean, and this happened like probably in the 70s. So I think things were a lot different. Well, I know things were a lot different back then. So I guess we can kind of put some of the things that they did on the times, but I don't know. I'm glad that we've advanced with the things that we have now in place to protect children. So anyway, it's been an hour and 6 minutes, so I've babbled on and on and on. Hopefully this is a good Sunday social. I think this is one of the best ones that we've had so far. So if you have anything that you want to talk about, any topics that you want to discuss, anything that you want me to promote that deals with social work that you do, let me know. Send me an email, leave a comment in the comment section. And next week, I plan to have something prepared for you all. And hopefully it'll be just as good as this one. So if you are just joining, because I saw the number go up, if you're just joining, this live will be available on YouTube and you can watch it over. So share this with your colleagues, share this with your friends if you thought it was interesting. I will put the topics discussed in the comment section or in the description box also. So until next time, I will see y'all later. Oh, wait, let me see. Adrian Preston. It blew my mind. Do you think there was some religious beliefs that played a part in their approach to everything? Yeah, I think so. And I'm reading a comment from Facebook, so I had just switched from YouTube to Facebook. But Adrian says, do you think there was some religious beliefs that played a part in their approach to everything? They said in the documentary that they were part of the Church of Latter-day Saints, I think it was. I'm not really familiar with that religion. And I don't know. I think and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that those are Mormons. I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that that's that religion, the Church of Latter-day Saints, I think. I'm not familiar with it, so I can't really say. I don't know, but it seemed like the church, in the documentary, the church people knew about the guy and the things that he had done. And in one part of the documentary, they said that the church people were kind of like welcoming him back and stuff. But, you know, sometimes in some religions, people are all about forgiveness and that kind of thing. And sometimes some people can turn a blind eye to certain things, especially I go back to the times. It was the 70s. So I think things were a lot different back then. So I don't really know if the religion played a part in it, in their approach to everything, because I don't know enough about their religion. to make a valid comment on that. But it could have, because if you're really into whatever religion you're in, then I think that your religion plays a part in what you do. Anything else? Questions, comments? All right, let's see. It says I have another comment here, but I can't see it. All right. So hopefully y'all will go and see that. If you have time to this week, if you have Netflix. And I will see y'all next Sunday. And if I'm not going to be on next Sunday, I'll let you know. All right. So y'all have a good evening and a good week. And happy studying for those of you who are studying for the exam.